you needed to improve your executive presence, or maybe you are at a higher level in your leadership journey and you know that this skill is something that you're trying to develop, but you're just not quite sure, does it really exist? Or are people just talking about something that is not impactful whatsoever? In this video, if you have ever wondered about executive presence, wanted to know more about it, then this is the place for you today. In this video, I'm going to share with you a bit of a different style video on my channel. This is more of a conversation about executive presence. Is it real? Excuse me, or is it hype? Which one is it? Because I hear a lot about it, and in this video, I'm going to talk about why executive presence is completely confusing, give you my over 20 years of experience with it to let you know if it's real or if it's not, or if it really is just a hype. And then if I have time, I'm going to share with you a strategy to help you develop it if this is something that you are looking to try to do. Now, if you are in a leadership role and you have clicked on this video, then you are meant to be here today, because this is a topic that people typically seek out if they are truly trying to advance themselves as leader, and I'm glad that you are here today. Now, my channel, if you're new to me, I focus heavily on communication, heavily on leadership development. I give you over 20 years of experience that I've had as a public speaker, an executive coach, a C-suite executive, and a director to really help you to stand out from everybody else. If this sounds like something that you are very interested in terms of yourself as a leader, then you will absolutely want to subscribe to this channel. This is where we talk about how you can make that bigger impact on your communities, your state, your world as a leader. Now, in terms of my executive coaching practice, I work one-on-one with women in leadership. However, I have women in leadership that are part of my audience and men in leadership that are part of my audience also. So I welcome all of you here today. I appreciate you being here. You're going to gain a lot of information that I'm going to share with you specifically as it relates to executive presence. Now, this is a live video, meaning that you are more than likely watching the replay right now, friends. So welcome, welcome. Give me just a few moments. There's typically a point in time during the lives on YouTube where people will join the conversation. Let me say hello to them, and then we'll talk a little bit more about executive presence in terms of, is it or is it just a hype? I'm sure you want to know. So, as I mentioned, executive presence is a word, it's a term that people say nowadays. Now, the word executive presence itself, I would say the word is relatively new. It's a relatively newer type of frame that people say or mention nowadays. Now, before I go into that, I want to say hello and welcome to those of you who are on the live today. Feel free to let me know what part of the big, beautiful world you are joining from today, and what are your thoughts about executive presence? Let me know in the comments below. Let me know what your thoughts are about it. If you think it's real, do you think executive presence is hype? Do you think it's a mystical creature that's out there that people just made up? Let me know in the comments below what you think about executive presence, and we're going to talk about it today. And let me know where you're joining from also in the world. Now, executive presence itself, as I mentioned, it's a relatively new term. It's a new term. However, the concept of it is not new. I genuinely believe that executive presence, in terms of what people perceive it as right now, something that's been around probably for centuries, but has been called different things. It may have been called leadership presence. It may have been called presence. It may have been called other things decades and decades ago that I'm not privy to because I wasn't around then. So the concept of it is still the same. It's still something that you absolutely need as a leader, or so we think, right? This is something where we're not quite sure, is it real or is it hype? Well, first I want to mention, for those of you who have just joined, we're going to talk about executive presence. So this is a bit of a different type of video on my channel today. My channel, I typically go into more detailed instruction in terms of techniques you can use to elevate yourself as a leader in terms of how you communicate, particularly if you are a woman in leadership, a man in leadership, then you learn a lot of information here. However, this video is going to be more of a conversation because I know people talk about executive presence. They wonder about it. They're not sure about it. Is it real? Is it hype? Is it a mystical creature? Like, what is it? And so I want to just have that conversation with you all today about this topic. Now, executive presence itself, and I want to know from you, what are your thoughts about executive presence for those of you who are watching right now, or even if you're watching the replay, what are your thoughts about it? Do you think it's real or do you think it's hype? Let me know in the comments below. Executive presence itself is confusing. Now, as I mentioned earlier, executive presence has been around probably for decades and decades. It's just the name has probably been different than what we call it now in terms of executive presence. Now, why is executive presence so incredibly confusing? Why is it so confusing? Well, let me give you some insights on that. And this is the reason why we have to determine, is it real or is it a hype? The reason why executive presence is so confusing is that the term that we are calling it executive presence is relatively new, and that people mention it, but there's not a clear definition for it. And so I've seen many things on LinkedIn and on different types of channels that talk about executive presence. So today we're going to go into it. Before I go into this more, I want to say hello to DRE, ladies, men, welcome, welcome. Hope you're doing well today. Let me know what part of the big, beautiful world you are joining from today, and what are your thoughts about executive presence? Put them in the comments below. Obi-Wan Kenobi. Wow, Obi-Wan Kenobi is present. I did not know Obi-Wan Kenobi was going to be here on the live today. Welcome, welcome. Appreciate you being here. I appreciate the compliment, Obi-Wan Kenobi. KY, stay fly. Welcome, welcome. Hope you're doing well today. Let me know where you all are joining from the big, beautiful world today, and what are your thoughts on executive presence? Let me know in the comments below. Do you think it's real or do you think it's a hype? Let me know. Let me know. We're talking about that today. If you are just joining, we talked about executive presence. The term itself has probably been around for decades. We just call it a different term nowadays. We call it executive presence. Now, why is it confusing? Why is this whole thing confusing? It's confusing because there's so many definitions out there, and the individuals that are sharing the term executive presence with you, they are bringing it to you in a very academic-like way. And so before I go into that, I saw something come up on the chat. Let me take a look. KY Stay Fly says, too much energy in the morning. New York. Okay, I have energy like this all the time. KY Stay Fly. I'm excited every single day to be live with you all on YouTube. If you like this content and you're learning something from this video, then you absolutely want to subscribe. But this is what you get from me every single day. KY Stay Fly. And you're joining from New York, so welcome, welcome from the Empire State. So what part of New York are you joining from? I have spent time in the Bronx. I did my residency there, and I spent time in Rochester also. I've toured Albany and a couple of the areas. So let me know what part of New York you're joining from. Now, as I mentioned, why is executive presence so confusing? Let's break this down. Most of the time, people are sharing with you their insights on executive presence that are very academic in nature. Very academic in nature. So let me go into that. Before I do that, we have Stay Gold. Welcome, welcome, friends. Stay Gold from Utica. Are you from Utica, New York? Possibly, because Utica is in New York. But let me know where you're joining from. I have seen executive presence broken down into percentages as formulas. There's an executive presence book that talks about percentages and formulas. It says executive presence is 60% gravitas and let's see, 6% gravitas, 30% communication, 10% appearance. I don't agree with that. I will tell you my very humble opinion. I don't agree with that formula. I don't think executive presence is a formula. I'll say that. I don't think it's a formula. I've seen definitions for executive presence that are literally a paragraph long, leaders, a paragraph long. And so when you have executive presence being shown and explained to you in the form of a formula or in an academic and textbook definition, how can you ever understand it? How can we ever understand it? It's very difficult to do so. Now, I will give you my very humble opinion, what my definition of executive presence from over 20 years of having it here is. Executive presence is your ability to inspire and influence people as a leader. That's my definition of it. Let me know what your thoughts are about that. Before I go into more of this, Stay Gold says, yes, from Utica, New York. Okay, awesome. Yes, I actually have spent time in Utica when I was in Rochester. So welcome, friend. Glad you're here today. And let me know if you have any questions about executive presence or what your thoughts are on executive presence. Let me know in the comments below. So we talked about why it's confusing. It has been presented to us in a very overly academic type of way, very overly academic. And sometimes it makes it very difficult to understand exactly what it is. therefore, there's a reason why everybody should be confused about it. They should have no idea of what it is because it's not given to you in a way that it makes sense where you understand it. The other part of why executive presence is confusing, and I know I'm going to upset some people by saying this, so therefore my apologies, accept and please in advance. But a lot of times what I've noticed is that people that are discussing executive presence are people that have helped people develop their executive presence, but they have not actually been in situations where they had to showcase it, if that makes sense. So let me explain. Coaching is great. I'm an executive coach and I work specifically in terms of my target audience with women in leadership. So if executive presence is something you're trying to develop as a woman in leadership, then feel free to contact me for a strategy session in the description below. However, coaches work with different individuals. And on my channel, I have a mix of women in leadership, men in leadership that are present also. So I want to say this specifically. You're going to get a lot of instruction out there from different people that are in the coaching industry. And they may tell you specifically that coaching is going to help you, and I will help you with their executive presence. But before you work with someone that does that, make sure you know exactly what they are doing if they've actually had experience in executive presence. So because there's many people out there that will tell you about it, but they won't necessarily, they haven't actually been through it. Does that make sense? So you don't want to get from someone that has never had to showcase their executive presence. Maybe they have not been in those very complex, challenging discussions in a boardroom or with stakeholders and etc. Now, before I go into this more, Roblox lover, hello, welcome friend. How you doing today? Let me know what your thoughts are on executive presence as we're talking about that today. So you have a combination of reasons why it's confusing. One, you have it presented to you in a very academic way where it doesn't make sense. And then two, you have people that are telling you about executive presence that actually haven't lived it, if that makes sense, and it makes it very confusing. So let's go to our next topic. Is executive presence, is it real or is it a hype? What are your thoughts in the comments below? Let me know if you think it's real or if you think it's a hype. Now, I've seen several posts on LinkedIn that talk about executive presence in terms of is it real or is it a hype? And I've seen a mixture of what people's responses are. Some people will say executive presence is real and you can only achieve it by the academic way I explained to you earlier, meaning that you have to go through this formula, you have to master these percentages, and you have to read this definition, and it's very much of a aloof type of topic. Like you just simply don't understand what's being said. So there's people out there that say executive presence is real, but it's only real if you understand it in an academic sense. There's another group of people that say executive presence is completely nonsense. It's not real. It doesn't exist. And then there's your third group of people that say, yes, executive presence is real and you really do need to showcase it, but there's strategies that you can use to actually help you implement it into your overall leadership development every single day. Now, a lot of the times people wonder, well, is it real or is it hype? Because I've heard and I've seen people, and some of my clients have said they've been told they need to work on their executive presence. They need to enhance their executive presence. And they become really frustrated when their managers or leaders tell them they need to work on their executive presence. And they're wondering, well, what is it? What am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to work on it? So it leaves them to think, is this real or is it a hype? Now, I'll share with you, as I mentioned at the beginning of our video today, I'm going to share with you my very humble opinion of executive presence, if it's real and if it's hype, and what my thoughts are about people that think that it's real or if it's not. I will tell you, I have been in a lot of very unique situations. God has blessed me to be in some very, very friendly and some very contentious situations. And I've been doing this for over 20 years. I've been in those very high stakes, high pressure situations, which is what I focus on my channel to help you really be able to move forward in your career. And I can tell you that executive presence is real. It is absolutely real. It is something that you will want to develop as a leader. Now, if you're not interested in being a leader and being that executive, that person that is at a higher level of leadership, whether you are a senior VP in your company or a VP in your company, maybe you're the president of your company, you might be the CEO of your company or CEO of another organization, or etc., then executive presence is real. Executive presence is something that you want to master. Why is it real? I have seen over the past 20 years of my experience as a director and as a C-suite executive that your executive presence can really set very important boundaries that you need to have as a leader, so people know that, one, you're the leader and that you are there taking care of whatever the issues are, but then two, help you set boundaries in terms of how people need to communicate and speak to you. I have seen leaders, friends, that have not developed an executive presence, and they have been completely disrespected at work. They have been walked over. They have been bypassed for promotions. They have not been able to really go to that next level in their careers because they did not have an executive presence. Now, as I mentioned, there's people out there that will say executive presence is not real. And I would say for those individuals who say executive presence is not real, they are entitled to their opinion. But I want to know from those of you who have just joined, welcome, welcome. Hope you're doing well today. Let me know what your thoughts are on executive presence. Do you think it's real or do you think it's a hype? Let me know in the comments below, and let me know where you are joining from in the big, beautiful world today. There's several of you that just joined, and we've been talking about executive presence. Is it real or is it just a hype? And we've talked about a couple things, and I'm actually at the point where I am talking about, is it real or is it just a hype, and giving you my perspective from over the past 20 years as a C-suite executive, as a director and a manager and a public speaker, to help you understand, is it real or not? If you want to dive into this a bit more, definitely check out the replay, but I'll highlight briefly what we talked about in a few moments. Now, as I mentioned, in my past 20 years of being on the news and interacting with different congressional leaders on the national level here in the United States, and on the state level here in the Sunshine State of Florida and different states I've lived in, you need an executive presence. You need it. And for those people that think executive presence is not real, it is. It is real. It's not a mythical creature that's out there that people talk about. They say it might be there, but it's really not. No, it is something you need. It helps to showcase yourself as a leader, and it helps to present yourself as that very best version of yourself as a leader. Now, what I have seen out there is that there are individuals out there that are saying executive presence is not real, it's just nonsense, like complete nonsense. Now, one of the things I will say, and this is my very humble opinion, and so I hope that no one takes offense to this, is that the people that I've seen that say executive presence is not real or doesn't exist, typically have struggled with developing it at some point in their career. And oftentimes what happens is, if it's something that you are struggling with at some point in your career, you may have not been able to really master it. But that doesn't mean it's not real. That doesn't mean it's nonsense just because you may not have been able to master it in your particular role. It could be something where if you are not able to master your executive presence, that's fine. It's something you can talk about. But I do disagree with the individuals that say executive presence isn't real. I genuinely do believe some of those individuals probably struggled with it at some point in their careers and maybe didn't understand how to master it. Maybe they've been in those more academic-like settings, and they have not been in those real leadership roles, as I say on my channel, where you've been in the fire, you've been in the trenches, you know what happens in leadership. They may not have been exposed to those type of settings, and so they're speaking from executive presence as something that is highly complicated, doesn't make sense, I don't want to learn about it, and therefore it doesn't exist. I don't believe that. So you'll know from me, I have a lot of videos here on my channel that talk about executive presence, specifically for leaders and especially for women in leadership, to help them be able to develop this skill, because you do need it. If you're trying to make a big impact on the world, how you present yourself as a leader, it matters. It really does matter. And if you think executive presence isn't real, then I want to encourage you that it is real. Please take my guidance of over 20 years navigating this to understand that this is something you need to do. So I want to say hello to Mike Collars. Welcome, Mike. Hope you're doing fantastically well today. Let me know what part of the world you're joining from today, friend, and what your thoughts are about executive presence. So for those of you who just joined, we've talked about executive presence in different ways. So before I finish up with this live, I have to give you all one strategy. I can't have a live on my channel without giving you something, giving you some type of strategy to work with in terms of developing your executive presence, because that's typically what I do on my video. For those of you who just joined, you're welcome to subscribe if you like this information so far. But typically what I do on my channels is provide you with those very advanced communication skills that you will automatically stand out from everybody else as a leader if you follow them and learn from over 20 years of experience as a C-suite executive, as a director, as a manager, and as a public speaker. But to summarize what we have talked about today, we've talked about executive presence. Is it real or is it just hype? If you want me to talk about this more in detail, let me know in the comments below. I'll talk about it a bit more either in a recorded video or perhaps in a video setting where it is a pre-recorded video. I can do something like that or talk about more live this evening when I go live. We've talked about a couple of things. One, why is executive presence so confusing? Because it is. So we talked about that. If you're just watching, definitely check out the replay. Two, we've talked about, is it real or is it hype? Three, I've given you some insight in terms of my humble opinion about executive presence. Do I think it's real or do I think it's a hype? I believe it's real. And now I want to give you the one strategy. So if you're trying to develop your executive presence, what I want to share with you is that there's one strategy that you have to do. There's a lot that goes into executive presence. I have several videos on my channel that talk about executive presence. Definitely check out my pre-recorded videos and absolutely check out my live videos. That's where I talk about it a lot more. I have just a lot of information on it, but you want to be consistent in your executive presence. The way you communicate to others needs to be consistent at all times if you're trying to develop your executive presence. I have seen so many senior leaders really struggle with this in a way that they are not able to continue to develop their executive presence just because they're not being consistent with how they're communicating with their teams. So consistency is one of the reasons why I have noticed that people tend to struggle with their executive presence. If you want me to go into more detail on that, let me know in the comments below if you're watching the replay or you are watching the live video. I hope you all have an amazing day. Make sure you check out my live videos that talk about executive presence and my pre-recorded videos here on my YouTube channel. Share this information with a friend or a colleague of yours that may be trying to develop their executive presence, or someone, or even yourself, if you know you have a bigger vision for yourself as a leader. Maybe you're trying to make an impact on a grander scale, not in just your community. Maybe you're trying to do something in your state or impacting the world. Then contact me, especially if you're a woman in leadership. Reach out to me for a strategy session in the description below. If you're a man in leadership, feel free to subscribe to the channel. Check out the information. I have a lot of great information that really does transcend gender as it relates to leadership and communication that will help you regardless of where you are on your journey. I hope you all have an amazing day. Join me later this evening for another live, and I will talk to you soon. Have a great day, and join me for the next video. Bye for now.